They silenced her. Why the apostles feared the commanding power of Mary Magdalene. No one speaks of her as she was. They speak of what they invented, of what they needed her to be, of what was more convenient for them to believe. A repentant prostitute, a saved woman, a silent follower. But that is not what she was. That is what they allowed to remain. Because the truth was far too uncomfortable. Mary Magdalene was not saved by Jesus to become a shadow. She was recognized by him as an equal, and that the others could not bear. Here you will not find the domesticated version. You will not see a woman weeping at the feet of a master. You will see someone who walked beside him, who spoke with authority, who sustained communities, who taught when others doubted, who was called Apostle of Apostles not as an honorary title, but as a statement of fact. And you will also see how that was erased, not all at once, not with open violence, but with something more effective, with strategic silence, with reinterpretation, with the slow weight of a narrative that prefers predictable heroes. This is not a modern reclamation. It is a reconstruction of what the ancient sources let slip between the lines, of what the Gnostic texts shouted and the canonical ones whispered, of what ecclesiastical history tried to hide but could not erase entirely. Because there are traces. There are always traces, and when you follow them you find something that changes everything. A woman who needed no permission to lead, and men who did not know what to do with that. The first time Jesus saw her, he did not save her. He recognized her. There is a huge difference between the two things, but history preferred the first version because it is easier to digest. A savior and a saved one. Clear roles, hierarchy intact, no threat to the order. But what really happened was more disturbing. Jesus saw in Mary something that others did not see. Not weakness that needed redemption, but strength that needed direction. Not a follower, an equal. Mary did not come from nowhere. She was not a woman without resources, without education, without voice. She came from Magdala, a prosperous city, a commercial center. She had her own means. The Gospels say it without realizing it. She financially supported the group, not with alms, with patrimony. That already placed her in a different position. She did not depend on anyone to eat. She did not need male protection to survive, and that, in that world, was power. When she joined Jesus' movement, she did not do so as one seeking refuge. She did so as one who recognizes a path worth walking, and Jesus did not receive her with condescension. He received her as one receives someone whose presence changes the group's dynamic. The others noticed it immediately. They did not say it openly, not at first, but they felt it. The way Jesus spoke to her, the way she responded. There was no submission. There was dialogue. Peter saw it first. Peter, who had left everything to follow Jesus, who considered himself the first among the disciples, who expected to be recognized as the natural leader. Peter saw how Jesus withdrew with Mary to converse. He saw how she asked without timidity. He saw how Jesus did not simplify the answers, and something inside Peter tensed. It was not romantic jealousy. It was something deeper. It was the fear of being displaced, that his closeness to the Master was not as exclusive as he believed. The other disciples also perceived it. James, John, Andrew. They saw how Mary did not ask permission to speak, how she did not wait to be given the floor, how she intervened in theological discussions with a clarity that unsettled them, because they were not used to that. In their synagogues, in their homes, in their lives, women did not do that. And here was one who did, and Jesus did not stop her. On the contrary, he listened to her. There was a moment, never recorded precisely but mentioned in fragments, in which Mary taught. She did not share a testimony, she taught. She explained a passage, developed an idea, corrected an interpretation, and she did it in front of everyone. Some listened uncomfortably, others resentfully. Peter spoke afterward, not to her, to Jesus. "Master, is it appropriate for her to speak like this?" Jesus looked at him for a long time. Appropriate for whom? Peter did not know what to answer. Jesus continued, "If she has something to say, and it is true, what does it matter who says it?" Peter lowered his gaze, but the discomfort did not go away. It stayed, and it grew, because Mary did not just speak. She acted. When the group needed organization, she organized. When there were conflicts, she mediated. When resources were lacking, she obtained them. She did not wait for the men to resolve everything. And that disrupted the balance. The disciples were accustomed to being the main actors. The women who followed Jesus, and there were several, supported from behind. They cooked, cared, provided. Important roles, yes, but invisible. Mary did not accept that invisibility, and Jesus did not impose it on her either. There were teachings that Jesus shared only with some. The Gospels speak of secluded moments, of private revelations. Mary was in many of those moments, not always, but frequently. And what she learned there, she did not keep as a mystical secret. She transmitted it, she taught others, she formed community. And that was what unsettled the most, because she was not content with knowing. She wanted others to know. And that is leadership, real leadership. The Gnostic texts, those that the early church decided not to include in the canon, speak of this with brutal clarity. In the Gospel of Mary, Peter asks directly, "Did he prefer her to us? Did he tell her things he did not tell us?" And Levi responds, "If the Master considered her worthy, who are you to reject her?" That tension is not a later invention. It is there, documented, uncomfortable. The moment of the cross came. The disciples fled, not all, but most. Peter denied knowing him. The others hid. They were afraid. Legitimate fear, real. They could be arrested, tortured, executed. But Mary did not flee. She was there, not alone. There were other women, but she was there. She saw everything. She did not look away. She did not protect herself from the horror. And when it was all over, when the body was taken down, she did not leave. She stayed. She saw where they put him. She memorized the place, because she knew she would return. On Sunday before dawn, Mary went to the tomb. She did not wait for someone to accompany her. She did not ask permission. She went. And what she found there changed everything. The empty tomb, the bewilderment, the fear, and then the appearance. The risen Jesus appeared first to her, not to Peter, not to John, to Mary. And it was not a passive encounter, it was a commission. Go and tell them, announce, proclaim. Jesus made her an apostle in that instant. Apostle means sent one. And she was sent to the men who had fled, to those who had hidden, to those who had not believed the resurrection possible. Mary ran. She arrived where the disciples were, locked in, frightened, broken. And she told them, "I have seen him. He is alive." She transmitted the words that Jesus had given her, the instructions, the message. And they did not believe her. Not immediately. The Gospels say it clearly. Her words seemed to them delirium. Delirium. Because they came from a woman. If it had been Peter arriving saying the same thing, would they have doubted in the same way? Perhaps, but not with the same contempt. They had to see for themselves. They had to receive their own appearance. And only then did they believe. But the fact was recorded, though they tried to minimize it. Mary was the first witness, the first sent one, the first to proclaim the resurrection. That, technically, makes her the foundational apostle, but history does not remember her that way. After the resurrection, in those confusing days when the movement tried to understand what came next, Mary continued leading. There are fragments, brief mentions, eloquent silences. She taught, she gathered, she sustained the faith of others when it faltered. She was not the only one. There were other leaders, but she was one of the main voices. And that could not last. Not in that context. Not with that social structure. Peter began to consolidate his leadership. Not openly at first, but strategically. He positioned himself as spokesman, as organizer, as the one who made decisions. And slowly, very slowly, he began to redefine who had authority. And in that redefinition, the women, including Mary, were displaced. Not expelled, displaced. There is a difference. Expulsion is visible, generates resistance. Displacement is subtle. It is done with small gestures, with decisions that seem practical, with silences that become the norm. There was a moment recorded in non-canonical texts where Peter said openly, "Let Mary leave from among us, for women are not worthy of life." Jesus, according to that text, responded, "I will guide her to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit like you males." The response is complex. It can be read as a defense of Mary, but it also reveals the mindset. To be equal, she must become male. The category is not questioned. A transformation is offered that validates the hierarchy. Mary resisted. She did not leave. She did not fall silent. She continued teaching. She continued leading communities. There is evidence that she had her own followers, groups that recognized her as teacher, texts that bore her name, traditions transmitted under her authority. But those communities were marginalized, their texts excluded from the canon, their teachings catalogued as heresy, not because they were theologically false, but because they threatened the order that was being built. An order where leadership was male, where authority was transmitted from man to man, where women could be saints, martyrs, virgins, but not apostles. The transformation of Mary in the collective memory was brutal, from recognized leader to repentant prostitute. Where did that narrative come from? Not from the canonical Gospels. There it is not said that she was a prostitute. It is said that Jesus cast out 7 demons from her. That could mean many things: illness, spiritual oppression, existential crisis, but not prostitution. That association was constructed centuries later. In the year 591, Pope Gregory the Great delivered a sermon in which he fused Mary Magdalene with the sinful woman who anointed Jesus' feet and with Mary of Bethany. 3 distinct women turned into one single figure, and to that composite figure he assigned sexual sin. Why? Because it was the most effective way to neutralize her. A redeemed prostitute is touching, but she does not threaten. She does not claim authority, she only gives thanks. And that was manageable. For centuries that image prevailed. Mary Magdalene, the saved sinner. The woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears. Beautiful image, powerful even, but false and functional. Because as long as she was remembered that way, no one would ask why the Gospels mention her more than most of the apostles. No one would question why she was at the cross when they fled. No one would claim her place as the first witness of the resurrection, but the truth has an annoying persistence. The Gnostic texts survived. Hidden, yes. Marginalized, yes. But they survived. And when they were rediscovered in the 20th century, in Nag Hammadi, they brought back the discomfort. Because there was Mary, teaching, debating, leading, and Peter, jealous. The disciples, resisting. The tension, documented. And the church had to do something with that. It could not ignore it entirely, so it reinterpreted it. Heretical texts, they said, unreliable, Gnostic influences, as if that resolved the central question. Why does that tension exist? Why does Peter question Mary? Why does she need to be defended? The answer is simple and devastating. Because she had power, real power, not symbolic, not derived, her own. And that power unsettled because it did not fit into the structure that was being built. A structure where ecclesiastical leadership was male, where apostolic succession passed from man to man, where women could be many things, but not priests, not bishops, not teachers with doctrinal authority. Mary Magdalene was silenced not because she had nothing to say. She was silenced because what she said carried too much weight. She was not forgotten for being irrelevant. She was rewritten for being dangerous. And that rewriting was so effective that for more than 1,000 years the false image prevailed over the real one. But now, with the recovered texts, with serious historical research, with the willingness to look without fear, the truth returns. And what returns is not a domesticated saint. It is a leader who did not ask permission, a teacher who did not wait for male validation, an apostle who was directly commissioned by the risen Jesus. And that changes everything. Because if Mary was an apostle, if she taught with authority, if she led communities, then the exclusion of women from ecclesiastical leadership is not a divine mandate. It is a human decision, a decision made by men who were afraid of losing control. And human decisions can be questioned. They can be changed, they can be corrected. They silenced her. But silence is never absolute. There are always echoes, and those echoes, when listened to carefully, tell a different story. The story of a woman who walked with Jesus, not behind, beside, who was not saved to be a shadow but recognized to be light, and who, when they tried to extinguish her, left enough embers so that centuries later, someone could rekindle the fire. Here ends what we can reconstruct with honesty, not with absolute certainty because history was manipulated, but with enough evidence to know that what we were told was not the whole truth, and that the woman they erased deserves to be remembered not as they invented her but as she was, someone whom the apostles feared, because she had something they could not control, authority that did not come from them, and that, in any power structure, will always be dangerous.